I'm John Little, and this is the Weekend Shockcast for Saturday, February 1st, 2014. A blueprint for the enslavement of America for Monday, January 27th, 2014. I've been reading about Joseph in the book of Genesis, and I had something of an epiphany. I realized that what is happening now to America follows a pattern that is almost 3,700 years old. But first, I need to set the stage for you. It was about 1886 BC, and Shem, Noah's son, had died just 72 years before. The memories of the Great Flood and the antediluvian age were fading. Civilizations were starting to really expand their borders. Political systems were in their infancy. Yosef ben Yaakov had just been elevated to Grand Vizier of Egypt, and he laid down one of the earliest systems of taxation in the history of mankind. And when it was all over, a free people had been enslaved. Note, I am sidestepping the great Bible timeline debate so that I can get on with the main point. Those of you who wish to look into the discrepancies between the timelines and why, well, you can find a few examples here on my Monday, January 27th article. Please feel free to post links to your favorite Bible timelines in the comment section. I'm interested in what y'all come up with. Now, where was I? Oh yes, Yosef ben Yaakov. He's better known as Joseph, the 11th son of Jacob. He was sold by his brothers into slavery, thrown into prison, and then elevated to the second highest position in Egypt, after correctly interpreting a prophetic dream by Pharaoh. But it was what Joseph did afterwards that interests us most. Using the authority of the Pharaoh, Joseph levied a 20% tax on all harvests and put all of that grain in storehouses. When the 7 years of plentiful harvests were over, the famine began. In the first year, they gave up all their money and their cattle and herds. In the second year, they gave up their freedom. Here is the section that we are talking about. When that year was ended, they came unto him the second year, and said unto him, We will not hide it from my Lord, how that our money is spent. My Lord also hath our herds of cattle. There is not aught left in the sight of my Lord, but our bodies and our lands. Therefore shall we die before thine eyes, both we and our land? Buy us and our land for bread, and we and our land will be servants unto Pharaoh. And give us seed that we may live and not die, that the land be not desolate. And Joseph bought all the land of Egypt for Pharaoh, for the Egyptians sold every man his field, because the famine prevailed over them. So the land became Pharaoh's. And as for the people, he removed them to cities, from one end of the borders of Egypt even to the other end thereof. Genesis 47, verses 18 to 21. What does Joseph do? He moves people into cities and sets the tax rate at 20%, verse 26, for everyone. Before the years of famine came along, the Egyptians were a free people and owned their own land. After the famine, they were slaves. In the story of Joseph, the years of plenty and famine were an act of God, and we can speculate about why God did this, but it was nevertheless a natural phenomenon. Today, our story is much the same. After years of amazing prosperity, we have entered a time of economic and financial famine. We have sold nearly everything that we own, including our children. All that is left is ourselves. Very soon, we will be selling that also. Did you know that just 10% of American households own almost 75% of all the wealth in the United States? Did you know that 25% or more of all households have zero or negative net worth? When the estate tax or inheritance tax was enacted in 1916, farmers had to sell land to pay the taxes when their parents died. Eventually, families were forced off the land and into cities. Just like Joseph did to the Egyptians, the U.S. government moved people off of their land and into the cities. It took them a bit longer, 100 years, to accomplish what Joseph did in 48 months. This is the verse where it happened. And as for the people, he removed them to cities from one end of the borders of Egypt to the other end thereof. Verse 21. Now I'm not saying that Joseph was a bad guy or that he deliberately went about to enslave the people of Egypt. Joseph was definitely a man of God, and the people of Egypt got a pretty good deal with Joseph running things. In fact, he saved their lives. Those that are enslaving us today aren't trying to save our lives. In fact, they want to destroy us, and they are following a plan that looks a lot like the one in the Bible. Except this one is evil incarnate. They have taken our land and our possessions, they convinced us to sell our children, and now they're coming for us. Are you ready for this? It's 1914 again, and they're taking us to war for January 28th, 2014. The similarities between 2014 and 1914 are startling. In 1914, the year World War I started, the vast Ottoman Empire was crumbling, and European countries jockeyed for position, hoping to be the first to carve out a big piece of the sick man of Europe. In 2014, the American empire is crumbling, and countries in Asia are jockeying for position to be the first to carve a slice out of the sick man of the world. The two biggest players in this game are Russia and China. Russia wants hegemony in the Middle East, and China wants the Western Pacific Ocean. And there's evidence that they both are looking to grab as much of the assets of the United States as they can get their hands on. Europe is looking worried. Saudi Arabia is playing the worst game of chicken that I've ever seen, with Vladimir Putin of all people. And then there's Japan. Shinzo Abe is so desperate to keep his country afloat in the Western Pacific that he's willing to start a war and kill millions of people to do it. Oh, he'll start a war thinking we'll be home by Christmas. Worse, there's word that Japan has quietly been building up her military in preparation for conflict with China, and he's going to start that war over the Senkaku Islands. Of course, he really wants the war to distract everyone from financial foolishness at home. And we need a war. No, wait. The banksters need a war. And they don't care who starts it. They just want it big and destructive. And they want to be the ones to put the world back together when it's over. I was listening to the Hagman and Hagman report when one of Doug Hagman's intelligence sources called in and gave the most important 4 minutes and 44 seconds of the entire show. Terrorism in Sochi is being set up to be the spark that lights the fires of World War III. Putin will see that as his chance to do what he wants in the Middle East. China will see their chance to do what they want in the Pacific. Japan's military will jump at the chance to recreate the past glories of Imperial Japan. And the rest of us? Well, the rest of us are going to do our best to stay off the casualty list. And if World War III doesn't start at Sochi, it will start at the Senkaku Islands. And if it doesn't start at the Senkaku Islands, it will start in Syria. And if it doesn't start in Syria, well, they'll find a way. Too many people with too much money want war, and the tinder is dry and a mile deep. All it will take is a spark, and it's all over. Welcome to 1914 version 2.0. Enjoy your stay. Are you ready for this? The Weekend Vigilante with Sheila Zilinsky for Wednesday, January 29th, 2014. None of us have very much time. Work and family take almost every moment that we have, leaving us with very little time to even sleep. Most of you probably don't even have the time to read through what I'm writing here, but with an average commute time of 25.4 minutes, you might have the time to listen. That's why I launched the SHOCKCAST. But I rarely talk for more than a few minutes, and I'm still struggling to set the audio up on the day that I write my articles, which is why I'm doing the Weekend SHOCKCAST now. And you would like to listen to something on your lunch break, yes? Well, I have a suggestion for you. It's the Weekend Vigilante with Sheila Zilinsky, and she has an awesome show that you can download from Blog Talk Radio every week. Here is the bio from her website. The Weekend Vigilante with Sheila Zilinsky examines what you're not being told on the 6 o'clock news. Hailed as the female Alex Jones, she exposes the emergence of the New World Order, world totalitarian government, the steady erosion of the Constitution, national sovereignty, and Christian values. She wages war on establishment corruption, corporate fascism, eugenics, martial law, and the encroaching police state, as well as the unseen hand of evil orchestrating world events. Dr. Tim Ball, co-author of Slaying the Sky Dragon, is a renowned climatologist, environmental consultant, and former professor of climatology. He has served on many national committees and speaks internationally, discussing how issues like climate change, water resources, and biodiesels are being politicized and exploited. He was instrumental in exposing Al Gore and others in ClimateGate. Tim and Sheila joined forces to wage war against corruption on the Weekend Vigilante. Sheila's had some pretty familiar names on her show, such as Tom Horn, Terry Cook, Steve Quayle, and Pastor David Langford. I am impressed with the breadth of her knowledge of current events and the Bible, and people that she has on her show have a lot to say that you need to hear. And the one that surprised me the most was the interview with Terry Cook. I have a link to the interview in my article. Terry Cook did a really good job laying out the many issues that we face for the immediate future and beyond. And for all of his tough guy background, he demonstrates an energetic sense of humor. So listen to the show. You can download it onto your MP3 player, or you can listen to it via webpage. However you want to do it, I recommend that you take the time to hear what Terry Cook has to say. And if you like what you hear, well, listen to some of the other shows that Sheila Zilinsky has recorded. I have a link to a recent interview with Steve Quayle and Pastor David Langford in my article. There's also V and Ken Shortkin. And I offer a link to the Weekend Vigilante with Sheila Zilinsky on my article. You can also search for her show amongst the other shows on Freedomizer Radio. You will be glad that you did. The instant middle class in China just add dollar collapse for Thursday, January 30th, 2014. The average citizen in China consumes a massive amount of gold. In fact, they have been lining up to buy as much of it as they can. And the Chinese government is fanning the flames of this forest fire, and that is a very, very curious thing. You would think that they would do the exact opposite. Did you know that the Chinese government does not allow any gold to leave China? With the exception of places like Hong Kong, you are not allowed to take any gold out of China. All the gold that is mined in China is bought by the Chinese government, and China has been buying up more than the total production of all the gold mined by all the gold mines in the world for almost 2 years. And they are encouraging the Chinese people to buy as much gold as they can? Are they insane? Not only are they not insane, but they are the smartest people in the room. So why are the Chinese buying gold? Well, I'm currently living in Taiwan, also known as the Republic of China, and gold is definitely a big part of Chinese culture. They even have their own kind of ingot called the saisi, also known as the yuanbao. And you can find them everywhere in shops that sell gold jewelry. But there's a lot more than culture at work here. A lot more. The thing is that the Chinese government knows that the global monetary system is about to collapse. They also know what will happen to their own economy, as well as the amount of social unrest that will follow. And that threat of social unrest scares the government of China. It scares them badly. Over the course of her thousands of years of history, China has always threatened to fly apart and has only been held together by an iron will and a determined military. In fact, the number one reason why China can never let Taiwan have true independence is due to what might happen to their provinces on the mainland. It would be very easy for some remote Chinese province to decide that they don't want to be a part of China anymore. Very easy indeed. And then there's the problem with the currency reserves held by the Chinese government. In a systemic collapse of the financial system, those reserves would be worth nothing. And that idea doesn't sit well with certain people in Beijing, which is why they're trading those reserves for hard assets like Manhattan real estate and factory buildings in Detroit. But I suspect that it will be the Chinese housewives that will be the biggest powerhouse. Eventually, the currencies of the world are going to collapse. It will probably happen within the next few months or weeks, or the globalists might decide to delay for a year or even 2. But it is clear that the global currencies are going to collapse, and when that happens, the New World Order globalists will be forced to stop their manipulation of the price of gold. And there's that tiny little detail of there being almost zero gold in the COMEX to manipulate. When the price of gold stops being manipulated, it will immediately begin to rise to its proper price level and beyond. And all that gold in the hands of Mrs. Wang and Mrs. Li will launch the core of China right into the middle class. The next question is whether you will follow their example. If you have all your money in the bank and do not hold gold or silver in your hands, you have made yourself vulnerable to the collapse of the monetary system. Do not allow yourself to be vulnerable. Buy as much silver as you can carry and as much gold as you can afford. Mrs. Wang and Mrs. Li would certainly agree with that idea. Are you ready for this? Charitable Gold for Friday, January 31st, 2014. I have a confession to make. By nature, I'm not a terribly charitable person. I'm suspicious and cynical. I tend not to believe people when they tell me things, and I tend to trample over people's feelings. By nature, I'm really not a nice guy. But God reached down and saved me from my nature and gave me eternal life. I am grateful beyond words, but I still have that natural man and must continually wrestle with my natural instincts, although I'm still not really all that nice. Now, God knows all my faults and has chosen to help me with some of them by giving me a wife who is the most godly woman that I know, and she loves being charitable. She would give away every dime that we have and dance for joy at the opportunity to do so. Worse, she has all my money and permission to do anything she wants with it, and I was the one who gave her that permission. Why would I do such a thing? It's simple. In the ways of charity, a love that is true, my wife is far wiser than I. There are still times when I grit my teeth when I find situations that require my help, and I grumble that God would make me give my time and my effort and disrupt my carefully organized life. And let's not forget about my money. God makes me give my money away. And you know what's worse? Whenever God gives me something valuable, I just know that He will make me give it away. And I hate that. Oh, did I forget to mention that I'm materialistic, self-centered, ungrateful, unforgiving, stubborn, argumentative, and stingy? Why in the world would my wife marry someone like this? I tell everyone that my wife is perfect except for the fact that she's a poor judge of character. I'm just glad that God is infinitely forgiving. God sent His only Son to suffer and die for me, and all that I can do in return is complain. Why am I saying all this? Because you are probably a lot like me. If you've done what I begged you to do, buying as much silver as you can carry and as much gold as you can afford, if you've done that, you are going to be rich. In fact, you'll probably be stinking rich. You'll be able to buy anything and everything you want. However, if you are a true Christian and truly seeking to serve the Lord, He will ask you to give it away, and you aren't going to like it. Take my own situation as an example. I followed my own advice and took all of my money out of my savings. I cashed in my retirement account. I liquidated my 401k and paid the penalty. I took all the money out of every financial institution except for what I will need in the immediate future, and I bought as much silver as I could carry and as much gold as I could afford. It wasn't a lot, but it will be worth quite a bit when the crash comes. In fact, compared to what will be happening to those around me, I might even be thought of as rich. But none of that matters, because I will need to give away most of it. When the financial collapse happens, there will be brothers and sisters in Christ in desperate need and without hope, unless you and I reach out and do everything that we can to help. And it will probably cost us everything. And if we don't, God will ask us why when we stand before Him. Do you spend much time thinking about eternity? You should. What you do now has a direct impact on what eternity will be like. Jesus said this, "Lay not up for yourselves treasures upon earth, where moth and rust doth corrupt, and where thieves break through and steal. But lay up for yourselves treasures in heaven, where neither moth nor rust doth corrupt, and where thieves do not break through nor steal. Where your treasure is, there will your heart be also." Matthew 6:19-21. So, would you really like to be rich in the life to come? For eternity? God gave you and me the ability to buy some gold and silver. It was a gift, and God means for it to be used in the right way. And we need to start right now to be mentally and spiritually ready to use that gift for God's purposes, no matter how much it hurts, and it will hurt. So, are you ready to take the gift that you've been given and use it for God? We have brothers and sisters in Christ who will be in terrible need when the collapse arrives. They would love to buy gold and silver now, but they cannot. When the crash comes, will you be ready to help? Is your gold charitable? For legal reasons, I need to add this note. I am not offering financial or disaster preparation advice in a professional capacity. These are merely my own thoughts on what I would do in these situations. This was the Weekend Shockcast for February 1st, 2014, and I'm John Little for OmegaShock.com.